Welcome to PHP Podcast. I'm Mike.
And this is Orlando, and it's time for another mini Monday episode, or Monday mini-sode, as I like to call it.
Our Monday minis.
Monday.
That's what we're calling these?
That's what we're calling it. So
Monday minis.
We haven't done one of these in a while. I thought we'd do a what sold. I don't want to do these like all the time, but we do them about once a month. And I kind of like to pick my favorites, and again, these are items that I share the specifics, and Mike does too, but to think of in general, whether it be brand or style or model. So they are not just, hey, this is what we sold, this is what we made. And we don't want to just be here to be braggadocious. We want to help. And so do you want us to start us off? Or?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So my first one is I picked up, and I don't normally do retail arbitrage, which is one of the reasons I want to talk about this. So I was at a retail store, and they had on clearance a whole bunch of Harry Potter 3D puzzles. Now, my wife and I, a couple years ago, when I first started reselling, we bought one for Christmas. We built it, we tore it down, and then I sold it. Now, I don't normally sell used puzzles because I never know if the pieces are complete, but I built the first one personally, so I knew it was complete. I sold it, and I actually basically sold it for the same price I got it for. So we got to build this puzzle, spend Christmas break doing it. It was a lot of fun. The 3D puzzles are fun. And we found these Harry Potter 3D puzzles at a retail store on clearance. And there were different ones. So we ended up bundling some of them together. So there's like two different sets bundled together. And I want to say we paid like somewhere between $10 to $12, it's like $11, something like that per puzzle. Okay. And they're pretty good sized puzzles. And the reason this was my kind of what sold exciting thing is I sold one of the bundles, and it sold for $80 for the two of them. So the profit there is pretty good. Not obviously like some of our flips, like incredible. But the nice thing is I have a ton more, and it was so easy to do these listings because, you buy 20 of each, and then you just do a couple listings bundled, a couple not bundled. And I know these are going to go during Christmas time. Like that's when I'm expecting most of these to sell, Q4. But the fact that I'm already getting some sales on these now makes it pretty exciting. So
and that's the nice thing. I mean, all you have to do is sell a few, and you're already in the profit, and the rest, right, is basically left over to just use for Q4. And I have a few of those that I picked up at certain stores where I just sold like 4 or 5, like Lego. I do that with Lego sets. When they go on clearance, I sell 4 or 5, and then I hold on to the rest of Q4, and they usually sell for like double the money because the item that you're talking about probably isn't going to be around, or they may have one, but it's a different model. And people are like, oh yeah, remember that one? I really wish we could find it. And then they'll find yours.
That's right.
So nice. All right. So mine is, I don't know. Did I share this? I feel like I shared this on our last What Sold. It's not the same one, but it's different. So I want to say about 2 years ago, and some of these I've shared on Instagram. So if you're not following us on Instagram, make sure you're following us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We're PHP Podcast. And I went to a garage sale, and at this garage sale, it was pretty awesome. It was a guy that used to work for Snap-on Tools. And the only reason I knew that, I always share this in our previous episodes when we talk about garage sales, be friendly, right? Get to know what the person's about, and just be genuine about it. Don't do it just for an angle, because people can see that from a mile away. And so, we're at this garage sale, and there's these clocks, those old like 80s, like wooden clocks. They're like rectangular, and you put them like on a wall, right? Most of the time they're pretty gaudy, Yeah. And he had about 4 or 5 of them on his table. And I asked him, I said, hey, how much would you do if I bought all of them? And he's like, I could do like $8 a piece. And I was like, all right, okay. And I was like, hey, and I always say this, ask if there's more. Hey, do you happen to have more of these? I was like, oh yeah, I have a whole garage full of Snap-on stuff. I was like, what? I hit the mother load. Now, at that time, did I say 2 years? Maybe it was 3 years ago. I wasn't into, my capital wasn't that high. Like, I didn't have the ability to just like buy out a garage or whatever, right? So I went back there, and I was super picky on what I was going to pick up. And he had a bunch of them. He had about 30 to 40 of these clocks, and they were new in box, all of them. So he had Hot August Nights, which is a cruising event that happens in Reno. He had one that was about America. He had one that was about dragsters, and he sold them all to me for $5 a piece. Okay. So if you think about it, if I bought 30 of them, right, that's $150. Earlier, this last month, I sold 2 of them, one for $150 and one for $130. And then I sold another one, in the past. So I've sold a bunch of these. I made profit within the first 2 sales. So the most recent one that sold was a pretty awesome one. You'll see here in the picture. It's a Snap-on Hot August Nights, and it actually has a year. So I usually would say, stay away from stuff that has specific years. But, if it's Snap-on, people just like collectible pieces, right? Snap-on jackets, Snap-on certain posters could be money. You got to be careful. There is some Snap-on stuff I wouldn't pick up. But again, paid $5 and this one sold for $100 plus ship.
Nice. I love it. All right. So my next one is something we've talked about before. We talk a lot about like workout equipment, those types of things. And we also sell used shoes. And this was a pair of Reebok CrossFit shoes. Now, we talked about CrossFit shoes in the past, but CrossFit is, I always kind of jokingly say it's like a cult. Like people who get into CrossFit, man, like it becomes their life. And so people who get into CrossFit, they have specific types of outfits they like to wear. CrossFit shoes are basically just flat bottom shoes, makes it easier for doing things like deadlifts and squats. But they like to put the word CrossFit on them, right? And so people will buy these shoes because they say CrossFit and because their famous CrossFitters wear them. And I picked these up at a thrift store for about $3 and I sold them for $45, which again, it's not like huge, but the ROI is actually pretty good there. And so if you can see these kinds of shoes, and I probably took an offer on this and took less than I could have taken. But it's one of those things where I don't like to hold on to used shoes forever. Because I feel like they start to disintegrate over time and heat and things like that. So I do like to move them. And so I'll take a good offer on them. But if you see CrossFit, pretty much anything, and it's got the word CrossFit on it, chances are you should be picking it up. Yeah.
Or at least look it up because it ebbs and flows. I said interesting because there was a time when the market was down. I think they had some bad PR that happened and the market dipped. Yeah. Yep. And then, the news went away. And over time, people are, especially now with reopening, people are going to CrossFit more. And so they're looking for those items. And again, there's the issue with supply chain. So that was good. All right. So I wanted to share this Bachmann locomotive train you'll see here in the picture. Now, this train is not the only piece I picked up. I picked this up at a thrift store, and I've shared this before, like don't pass up on bags. Maybe I shared this story on our 5 things not to do at the thrift. If you haven't checked out that video, check out that video. And in this bag, there was this Bachmann locomotive that I just sold. You saw here, I sold it for $50.99 plus shipping. But here's the deal. I bought a bag full of items, right? And so in that bag was that locomotive. And along with that locomotive, there were like 3 boxes full of tracks. And then there were 5 railroad cars and 2 other locomotive type pieces, right? And so I paid $25 for this bag of goods. And this wasn't like high end. This was Bachmann. It wasn't Lionel. Lionel trains, I would always pick those up. But Bachmann, you got to be careful, do look up. But I knew if I paid $25 for this bag and I just sold 2 of the pieces in there, everything else is going to be profit. And sure enough, very first piece that sold, I sold for $50.99 plus ship with that locomotive. And then since then, I sold 2 more of those cars for about $20 each. And so I still have a few more pieces. So I'm going to be able to turn that $25 and probably to $200 plus. Nice. So that is my sold.
Very good. My last one is one I'm pretty excited about because I've talked about the slot track cars. Okay. So this is something that I bought a slot track car at a garage sale a while back and I tested it and things weren't working. So I'm like, I'm just going to lot tracks together and that'll be fine. The cars, if you can get unopened cars, man, those go for crazy amounts. But I was at another garage sale like about a month later and I found a box that had, and I'll put the video up here of that ride along. But I found a box that had a track, a whole set, didn't have the cars in it, but it looked like it had everything else. And then on another part of the garage sale, I found a box full of tracks. So he had like a pretty good sized collection of them. And so I ended up buying both of these. This box was complete. Everything was in there except for cars. It didn't have cars. But I had a car from another track that I was able to use to test it. Everything worked fine. And it was a complete set, had everything in there. And I have another tote just full of tracks. But this one, I paid $5 for the box and it sold for $75 plus shipping. And it's pretty sweet because, these are things that people are looking for if they're collectors, they're into this stuff. And they're okay with getting things without cars or even incomplete or lots of tracks because like the trains, people are looking for pieces. People are looking at building out collections. So if you have a set, like this set was nice because it had the manual, it had all that stuff in it. But I definitely know I'll be looking for slot tracks a lot more. This one, as you guys can see, is a Tommy Aurora AFX Infinity Raceway. And right on the listing, I put missing cars. The tracks are tested, and it sold within like a week of listing it. So make sure to look out for slot track cars.
All right. So I've shared this a lot, but I wanted to share it again, is that baseball gloves are one of the easiest things that you can source. And usually they're low cost. People are just trying to offload them. When they sell, they're easy to ship. I usually sell all of mine and I ship it in a padded priority envelope. And I do charge the shipping. And usually people do not have a problem with that. Right? Because you don't know. Some gloves could end up being over a pound. I mean, I don't know how many of those that are, but you know, that would put it pretty rough having a pound on your hand. But here's the deal. I have been on a streak with baseball gloves, and not that I'm a baseball glove expert. I did play baseball in high school, and that's the extent to my knowledge. And even then, that wasn't, you know, a big deal. So at garage sales, and usually you see them in stacks, and usually you can bundle them together. So I picked up this vintage, you see here in the picture, Reach leather baseball brown glove, very generic, right? It's a catcher's mitt, and you can tell it's old, right? You don't need to be a baseball expert to go like, that looks vintage. So I paid $5 for this glove, right? If you see in the picture, and it's sold for $100 plus ship, right? And here's the thing. I had no comps. I didn't know. Reach it's not a very well-known brand like Nakoma or Rawlings or for vintage gloves. But I knew based on the look that I could just charge high and that somebody was going to end up wanting to buy it because it brings back a memory. I actually just sold another glove that is only like 10 years old, but somebody was like, hey, that glove I used back in the day, I really was looking for it. And that was another glove. It's not on here, but I paid $5 and that one sold for $140. Maybe I should have put that one on here, but yeah, maybe. But it's all good. Anyways, keep an eye out. Baseball gloves, new or vintage, or, you know, just recently used, definitely worth a pickup. So hopefully all these what sold helped you out. Keep an eye out, you know, from Snap-on to CrossFit to baseball gloves to just the bags at the thrift. Just take a look at them and then you'll be able to have your what solds that are profitable. And with that being said, make sure to be real,
be relevant,
and be reselling. Peace.